Hi all, here's your seasonal booster shot, fully loaded with Ambrosial Juju to keep you on your toes, if not jumping for joy. Here we go. The themes you'll find in these newsletters are initially set in motion by a combination of astrological transits, cosmic and galactic frequencies, clients' issues, as well as whatever I most need to hear for myself in any given season. Then they're downloaded, aka channeled through me, and off we go. To get us started, here's an excerpt from my website about my metaphysical philosophy. Quote, "One of the trickier parts of the Earth game is at the time of our births. That's when a portion of our soul consciousness enters the baby's body as it's coming out through the birth canal. There's a moment when our consciousness becomes locked in for the ride of this incarnation. This is what I call the oh shit, what have I done moment, when we're stuck with the enormity of the task we've taken on. Immediately following this moment comes the master race, when we're moved into deep cover. In other words, we're on assignment, we've just forgotten what it is, and the game of cosmic hide and seek begins again in earnest. At any given time, the vast majority of the human race is under deep cover. After we die, aka drop our bodies, our soul reviews the incarnation we just left to see how we did with our original intentions. There's usually a lot of metaphorical head smacking and saying, shit, now I'll have to do it all over again. Consequently, our karma continues to wind and the wheel turns. This is because the deep cover rule applies until we become awakened to our true identity and soul purposes while in an incarnation." And there's a link to read the whole philosophy called Leela on my website. There are about 8 billion souls incarnate on the planet right now. At any given time, according to various spiritual teachers and traditions throughout the ages, approximately 99% of humanity remains under deep cover, never awakening to their true nature and soul assignment, and thus sleepwalking for their entire lives. With this in mind, cultivating a very long-range Taoist perspective on the whole Earth game, in which everything is evolving perfectly in the flow, helps one maintain equanimity, much less sanity. This also means that at present, there are about 80 million souls in a precious human incarnation with enough allotted good karma preloaded with the probable opportunity to become seekers on the path of awakening to their soul assignment and true nature at a more advanced level of the game. The above statement does not negate in any way the higher level of the truth in which all beings contain innate Buddha nature, aka enlightenment, as their divine birthright. But we live in a relative plane, and the relative truth is that most human beings are sleepwalking through life. In between lives, for most souls, because of the weight of their karmic baggage, there's little choice but to volunteer to be pulled back into the Earth game, because this is where the action is, karmically speaking. It's the only dimension in which the laws of karma, aka cause and effect, apply as the ruling force. So there are literally long lines on the other side for souls waiting to get into any human incarnation, even those with much struggle, suffering, and powerlessness, and mostly operating at the instinctual levels of security, survival, comfort, and greed. But at least in most cases, unless one has been very, very bad, there is not a devolvement back to the animal kingdom. To the degree that the weight of our karma is released with awareness while in the earth plane in a human incarnation, to this degree are our souls able to fly higher when not incarnate into higher frequency dimensions as light beings. Deep cover may also include most of the 60% of human beings who espouse a belief in reincarnation, according to studies, as these beliefs are inculcated from the culture and religion they were born into and not necessarily a sign of awakening. I look at this 1% of humanity who are in a high-quality incarnation in which there is an easier probability of awakening as incredibly karmically fortunate. Does this mean that they're all mindful and grateful of the opportunity they've been given and see it as a gift from the divine as well as well-earned from their own development? Not necessarily, and in fact, by far not. However, this 1% is still the pool of possible clients who might seek me out for services and for whom I'm speaking to now, or writing to. And this is also the pool from which we all need to more consciously seek our true karmic soul family as friends in the Tao or fellow travelers for the journey of this incarnation. Our families of origin, blood relations, etc. are usually chosen by our souls to first activate and then over time heal our allotted karma for this life, and many of these family relationships are karmic bondages that we're here to unwind. For only a fortunate few can say that they were raised by parents capable of unconditional love. In addition, many of us, usually until halftime in the game, aka age 50 or the Chiron return, continue to manifest relationships, personal and professional, that are similar types of karmic bondages, in an attempt to heal in disguised form that which we have not yet fully cleared with our families of origin. So that means that for at least half our lives, we may still tend to choose relationships of karmic bondage where there is something to heal by going through it and out the other side, with lessons learned and, if remembered, this is a big if, no need to repeat again. Nonetheless, at any age, once we are consciously awake and free enough, we can cultivate a more intuitive, discriminating mind when choosing relationships based more on a soul-level affinity and karmic heart bond rather than bondage. Many times, especially in romantic bondages, the person may come disguised as a very sweet gift, at least until the wrapping paper comes off. And then, what we're left with, once the irresistible karmic crazy glue wears off, is poison candy. Imagine the Earth plane as an oasis city within a vast deserted universe. And all 8 billion human beings are moving through this oasis like an almost infinite number of caravans, all moving in different directions, at different speeds, and speaking different languages. Our job, once we awaken enough from deep cover, is to choose our companions for the journey of this life based on the criterion that we're moving in the same direction, at the same speed, and speaking the same language. And what a trip it is once we do this. And of course, all relationships need to be reevaluated seasonally and cyclically based on the above criterion as our journey evolves, moving from the solely personal levels of our horizontal ego personality development towards the continuously accelerating spiral of our vertical expansion, back to the soul and beyond. This higher-centered development from the midpoint of the heart up governs transpersonal or universal love, communicating from our higher selves rather than ego, as well as psychic and spiritual communion with higher dimensions and source. And again, wow, what a trip. In each 30-year karmic Saturn cycle, we hopefully evolve and awaken in a natural organic process through the horizontal to the vertical, so that by our third cycle, which I call the victory round from age 60 to 90, our development is primarily a vertical. It's ideally not either or, it's and both. This means that over the course of our lifetimes, integrating our lower and higher centers into a balanced whole so that the illusionary boundaries of space, time, and horizontal vertical dissolve as we move to the next quantum level of our soul evolution. In choosing our karmic family to travel through life with, I found the most useful tool is in developing the discriminating mind and intuition to be able to hold a split screen in our view of all others. This means that on one side of the screen we see each person at their highest soul potential as well as containing their innate Buddha enlightened essence at a higher level of the truth. Then, simultaneously, on the other side of the screen, we also need to witness the relative truth of where each person is at on the level of the personality, little self-ego, in this chapter of their soul's story. Before we choose to get involved personally or professionally, we need to be unconditionally accepting of the whole package of their range, wounds and all, with the understanding that they may never totally fulfill their soul assignment and awaken to their soul potentials in this lifetime, and certainly not on our ego timetable. This is especially important when considering a commitment with a prospective life partner. Holding this split screen between relative truth and higher truth will help to accelerate our awakening process, as it also opens our hearts wider with compassion for those under deep cover. For once we can witness others with no judgment, then unconditional acceptance and appreciation that everyone is doing the best they're capable of becomes our default view. This also allows us to cut ourselves a break if we're carrying survivor's guilt for having a high-quality incarnation with relatively minimal suffering, even if it is a gift from the divine to be grateful for. because, believe you me, if that is your case, then it is well earned through our past lives of suffering, which cracked the heart open with compassion for self and others, as nothing lesser could do. After this, it will be easier to choose to abide by the rules of what I call karmic Al-Anon, rather than idiot compassion. The rules are, we didn't cause anyone's karma, we can't control it, and we can't cure it. Therefore, we need to look at why we're choosing to be with someone and take full responsibility for the choice. It's really not a question of their potentials or where they're at in realizing them, for they're always at exactly where they need to be at for their own karmic healing. The only question really is, what are you doing there? If we feel that a person is one of ours karmically, aka feeling some type of debt owed, then so be it, but at least we're going in with open eyes. For those of us not leaping for joy yet, or at least smiling at our lot in life, aka allotted karma for this incarnation, cultivating gratitude and a glass half full perspective is the optimal antidote. To help those of you that don't have an innately sunny glass half full disposition or are in a slump emotionally, I suggest reading two of my mainstays, Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning and Marcus Aurelius's Meditations. And yes, while I'm a Taoist and Tantrika and almost recovered hedonist with a karmic pleasure out of self-indulgence that I'm still unwinding, I'm also of a Stoic temperament, go figure, with Saturn, Lord of Karma, ruling my chart. We're all here, after all, through our reincarnational cycles to develop the fullest range of the human repertoire of experience, first in separate karmic cycles and then in culminating ones which combine the fullest range of all the cycles into one lifetime. In the Buddhist tradition, nirvana is not some external divine place, but the purified state of consciousness in which we're free of all negative emotions. Being in nirvana or heaven, also known as the awakened state, has four characteristic features. 1. A state of cessation of disturbing emotions from one's mind. 2. Absolute peace, a state of total tranquility of disturbing emotions. 3. Exuberant satisfaction, which is free from all forms of dissatisfaction. And 4. Definite emergence, when one will no longer relapse to an unenlightened state. So that means no relapsing from exuberant satisfaction, absolute peace, and no disturbing emotions. There has only been one being who I had the privilege of sitting darshan with in India many moons ago who appeared to emanate all four characteristics of realization. Besides this ancient one who radiated the void, most of the highest spiritual teachers that I've had direct experience with have attained the first three out of the above four characteristics. This means that when they're teaching or giving direct transmissions, they are at a level of consciousness that emanates a realized state of being. But when they're not at their highest, then not so much. However, when one is in their presence at its highest, one can definitely get a hit of this energy and it feels good. The danger is that it can feel so blissful that one needs to watch out for an addictive hook of dependency that arises from the limiting belief that this bliss can only be gotten from this teacher and is not attainable on one's own. And then there's a link for an article on spiritual teachers, buyer beware. So in addition to not judging spiritual teachers, you only need to ask yourself what you're doing there. It's important that we also cut ourselves a break with the spiritual materialism of being goal-oriented about enlightenment, but rather to accept, as I emphatically have, that while at times on any given day I do experience 3 out of the 4 traits listed above, especially during and after my sitting practice and when I'm operating as a channel, I certainly return to lesser states all the time! ! If truth be told, I've become somewhat demoralized of late while dealing with the spiritual materialism of some of my clients and feel like I'm repeating myself endlessly to help them hold the split screen with themselves as to where they sit on the continuum of awakening so that they can enjoy the trip more as human beings rather than as human doings. Sigh. I've never felt quite this way before in over 50 years as a spiritual guide in this life, and it has quote-unquote encouraged me, another FGO, aka fucking growth opportunity, to recommit to the Bodhisattva vow, which is, sentient beings are numberless, I vow to save them. Desires are inexhaustible, I vow to put an end to them. The dharmas are boundless, I vow to master them. the Buddha way is unattainable, I vow to attain it. For not only are seekers beginningless and endless in their questions and need for guidance, but so too is the maintenance of the physical vessel, the home, and the personal reality. Therefore, it behooves me to reboot the screen of my perceptions daily so that I can begin again and start over with a fresh eye to appreciate all the people, places, things, and circumstances in my life. Cultivating a fresh eye is, by the way, one of my favorite tantric practices. I just forgot. Now that I'm in my 8th decade and viewing it all fresh with my new almost 20/20 vision, after recovering nicely from 2 cataract surgeries in the last few months, I can see that a daily recommitment of my vows and reboot of my perspective are perfectly timed in the flow. It's not uncommon after a several-year Pluto transit over a personal planet, or in my case, over the ascendant North Node of Destiny, to experience a death of the old before a birth of the new. Consequently, there is the inevitable lag time in which we all find ourselves sitting in the inner void with nobody home. But now I'm in the process of reclaiming my innate enthusiasm for the trip by playing the role as galactic cheerleader, travel guide, and catalytic agent for those that come to me. For as my channels have reminded me, quote, your enthusiasm is your greatest gift, even more so than being a crystal clear channel, unquote. And so we might as well welcome this truth for each of our seasons and cycles of life. This is by Ngak'chang Rinpoche. Quote, impermanence is a cause for celebration. Impermanence is our opportunity to discover presence. Present moments are infinite. They will never end. We will never cease to have opportunities to start again. We will never cease to have opportunities to experience presence. And then a quote by Ram Dass under a picture of me meditating in my garden in a past life in India as a Brahmin courtesan called In the Garden by the River. Quote, if we come back into form from having merged with God, what the Buddhists call nirvana, we are in the world but not of it. We play the cosmic sport. We fill the forms, though there is no one home. It is just more lila, the dance of God, unquote. Finally, I'm extremely happy to share the astrological news of the season that jovial Jupiter, the planet of good fortune and abundance on all levels, started his transit through Juggler Gemini on May 2nd, 2024, which will run through June 9th, 2025. For me personally, with Jupiter and Gemini in my 5th house of romance and creativity in my birth chart, having this placement has always been quite the gift in terms of my enjoyment of the banquet of life with all types of romantic partners and creative outlets. And while too much Gemini in the birth chart, especially personal planets, can make one a bit overly ditzy and scattered more of the time, particularly mentally and in communications, this transit allows us to try new things and diversify what feeds our sense pleasures, higher mind, and soul, especially in whatever house, aka area of the life, one has Gemini in our birth charts. Just as wherever we have Jupiter in our birth charts, gives us a lucky edge of good karma. For example, when I have clients with Jupiter and Gemini in the 10th house of career natally, I encourage them to enjoy adding to their vocational toolkit by learning various modalities in their line of work that they have a passion for. As with this placement of Jupiter, they will find ways to enjoy and use them all in various permutations with great success. This is especially so if there are alternate indicators in the birth chart of a desire for a single focus, mindful depth, wherever Pluto resides and or other scorpionic influences. Plutonian or scorpionic influences. This energy is not quite the same as having awakened Uranus, say, in the 10th house, where it is boredom that inspires these types to have the longest resumes. As wherever Uranus is in the birth chart, there is a desire for the stimulation of new things continuously to keep one's interest and help stay awake and mindful. But with Jupiter and Gemini this year, we can all benefit from embracing our inner paradoxes and contradictions and releasing habitual mental ruts of identity by trying and tasting more variety when partaking from the infinite abundance of the banquet of life. For we're all multifaceted beings, and this transit is the perfect opportunity to allow us to embrace our fullest range of being. It's a year of stretching open and trying out a more diverse range of people, places, things, and circumstances than ever before. And for more, there's a link to infinite abundance, owning our inner Jupiter, and the final quote from Walt Whitman, "To me, every hour of the day and night is an unspeakably perfect